When we are developing, many times we have to deal with lists or with arrays. It's so for many purposes. Sometimes just to deal with a large data set. We have read a set of data from some data source, from some web services with REST. We read that directly from one database, and the result comes as an array. So we need to know how to read the values from the array, how to iterate over its values. Sometimes we need to use lists to make some kind of processing more generical, to include elements in the list or exclude these elements, for then processing all these elements together in a later step. So the scenarios that could lead us to the usage of lists are many. And then in this video I'm going to show to you some methods, some ways to use these lists, and then we are going to do together one use case based in the form validation from one web application. So let's go. Let's start taking a look how to create lists. Basically, I'll show you three examples. The first example will be declaring one variable named list. Let's call list1, then we could make differentiation. And then it's going to be assigned by this brackets symbol. What it means? It's going to create one empty list. You can take a look in the created result by printing here in the console the list1, the variable we have just created, list1, and then printing as well its type, list1. This will print the type of this list object, and we have here one empty list, an object. Okay, the second way we could do to create one list is to use not these brackets, but use the new array constructor. So it constructs one object using this standard syntax with the new operator. So here we have another way to create the list, but the output will be exactly the same. There is no difference if we are instantiated based in the new array or with the brackets. The output is the same. But when should I use the brackets? If you want to already create one object with some set of elements inside, it's an easier way to use with this bracket. So here we could add some objects with some codes like the object AB, the object CD, and the object EF, for instance. Then just executing that, as you can see, now it's creating the list, but it's not empty anymore. It has some elements inside. Okay, but now if I don't want to set the elements defined already in the constructor, I want to add elements inside that dynamically. So let's see that now. For adding elements in the array, we use the push method. What it means? We could take one list like this list2 that's empty, as you can see, and before printing that, we could execute the follow command, list2.push. List2.push receive one object to input. Like here, I could add some object named AA, and then now if execute again this method here, you can see that the second list has one object, AA, inside. And it's important to highlight that the push method adds always in the end of the array. So if I add some object here in this first list, the object will be added here at the end. So if I come here now in the list 1, after it was constructed with these three elements already inside, and execute the push method, passing as parameter this object here, this string ZZ, and now run the code again, you can see we have this ZZ and end. So the push method could add elements in empty lists or in lists that already have values, and it's adding always in the end. But now, if you want to remove elements from this list, let's take a look on that. For adding elements in the array, we use the push method. What it means? We could take one list like this list2 that's empty, as you can see, and before printing that, we could execute the follow command, list2.push. list2.push receive one object to input, like here I could add some object named AA, and then now if execute again this method here, you can see that the second list has one object, AA, inside. And it's important to highlight that the push method adds always in the end of the array. So if I add some object here in this first list, the object will be added here at the end. So if I come here now in the list 1, after it was constructed with these 3 elements already inside, and execute the push method, passing as parameter this object here, this string ZZ, and now run the code again, you can see we have this ZZ and end. So the push method could add elements in empty lists or in lists that already have values, and it's adding always in the end. But now, if we want to remove elements from this list, let's take a look on that. Now, to remove elements from the list, it's very simple. We have to use the splice method. This method receives 2 parameters. One parameter is the first position we want to exclude, and the last parameter is how many elements we want to exclude from this position. So if we want to exclude just one element, we just set the element position and then set 1. In this case, we have here index 0, index 1, index 2, and later on index 3. Now we are going to exclude the element in index 1. What we have to do? So we call the method splice, then I want to take out the position 1, that's CD, and after position 1 I would like to take out just one element. If I set 2, I will take out just 2 elements. So just doing that, we are going to exclude elements from the list. So to add push, to remove splice. Now executing this code, you could take a look here. We have printed AB, CD was excluded because it's index 1, and then EF and ZZ. Now we have seen how to remove elements from the list. Next step, how to iterate over these elements. Let's go. To read the elements from the list, to iterate over all elements in the list, there are many ways to do that with JavaScript, and I'm going to show to you one way. That's one simple way when the purpose is not to access individually elements but to access all elements. And we'll be using the for statement, the standard for statement, but with the in operator that will allow us to do a thing like for it, to process it elements. Basically, we have to do here the for statement, then we has to define some variable that will be the key to access each element in the list. So here name that as key in, and then the list name. In this case, I'm going to iterate over the list 1. List 1. Now what we have here, inside this for, the key will give me how to access each element in each iteration. So I'm just to print here, just for we track what is happening, we have the key, that's in the key variable, and using this key I can access in this list, in this specific key, the respective value. So we are going to iterate over all these elements, but actually we are not just going to have 4 but just 3 because we have performed a deletion here. So let's run this code now. Let me just clear this output here and let me execute that for you again. Here it is. We have the index 1, 2, and 3. So AB, CD was removed here, AF, and then ZZ. So as you can see, here we have a very simple way to process all elements that is on one list. Now with all these knowledges of how to create the list, how to add elements in the list, how to delete elements from the list, and how to iterate over that, we can do one use case for aiming the validation of a form in one web application. Let's start with that. So let's start to do our use case. Okay, our goal will be to do a form validation where a set of fields, in our case all fields, will be mandatory, and we are going to use one list to handle what fields were validated and what fields were not validated. and then we are going to control that based in one array from the JavaScript. So first, let's create here the basic structure from the HTML which the fields will be presented in this screen. Let's do a simple example with some 3 fields just for we have some scenario to explore this functionality. So okay, just here the very basics for the HTML, the document begins and ends, and then we are going to create the head part where we are going to program our JavaScript functions, okay, and then the body where we are going to print the fields and another stuffs our user is going to interact with. Okay, here we have the body. Then we need what? The form, because it's with the form that we are going to access the elements in the screen. Okay, so here we have a form, and now let's add here the 3 fields. Like we could have one input for user type its name, so the name of the field would be actually then your name, and then we could have just 2 another ones, one for email and another one for the phone of this user if he wants to be contacted by phone. So here we have the name, just the field labels here in a very simple way without the label tag, just to be faster. And then here we have the phone. Then I'm just going to break some lines here to not have that in a single line in our interface. So we are just going to validate this form, and then let's go for the important part of this demonstration, that is the JavaScript programming. We just need to do the creation of one button here that we are going to trigger the form validation where we are going to have our function implemented. So here we could have the type button and the value of this very creative name, validate, just for we have some scenario to test, just that. So I'm having here the plugin live server. So execution that, it's going to trigger already the form in my browser, and okay, at least it was the expected result. And then here we are going to see the fields we have just created. Yes, it's here. Okay, it's here already available. And then now we are going to implement the validation of these fields using JavaScript lists. Once we have created the form, we have to create now the validate function. So let's focus on that. We are going here in the head section of your HTML document, use the script tag where we can input the JavaScript code. So just define here the script tag. And then we are going here inside define one function that we are going to trigger when we click here on validate. So our function will be named validate as well. No parameters, and here it's body. As I have said to you, this video is not about form validation, it's about the usage of lists. So that's our goal. So let's create here one list that is the fields to be validated, fields to be validated. And then here we are going to set all fields that are mandatory in our system. We could think that this list is not going to change, so it could not be defined with let, but with const. We are not going to change that. And the fields, we already know that. We have the field name, we have, okay, just like a string, we have the field name, we have the field email, and we have the field phone as well. Okay, 3 fields to be validated. So that's the nice thing to use lists. We are going to do one generical processing that will take all fields. So no matter we have 3 or if you have 20, the logic will be the same, just we include more field names here in this list. So basically what we have to do, we need now to identify what fields were filled and what fields were not filled. So I could create here now another list that will be fields with problems, like the field was not filled, and it becomes empty in the beginning. And according we find the problem, we will add in this list. Then at the end of the processing, we know we have problems. We just need to think about how to display that to user. Okay, so how will be the processing? As far as you remember, we have seen previously in this video how to do a for each statement. We could define a key, and then we are going to process all fields here. Now we have a way to access each of the form fields. How to access the form? I have no name in its form yet, but I could give a name to that or access in different ways. But I'm going to give here one name, like it will be name form user, like it's to create a new user, for instance, to register one user, and then we could access that this way. Document dot the form name, and then we could access each field by its name. How to access field name? We could define that in a separated variable to be easier to track, like here field name, and then what's going to be the field name? Each of these positions. So we are going to access the fields to be validated list, and then we are going here to access the specific field name for the proper key. So the first iteration name, second iteration email, third iteration phone. So here field name. And then with the field name here, we can access the field inside the form. And then we could ask to this field what's its value. The value is what user type inside. So field, what is its value? And here we have field value. Our validation will be very simple. We are just going to ask if there is some value or not. So if field value is equals to empty, it means we have one problem. This field was not filled properly. So we are going to add in this list, the name of the field that presents problem. Okay? And then at the end of this form, we know if the form was validated or not. So what we can do here? We could do one if statement and ask to this list. If the list fields with problems dot length, the length statement property we have not seen before, but it's very important to give to us the information about how many elements is in the list. So if its length is equal to 0, it means all fields were properly filled. So here we could just present some nice message like some window alert saying validation okay. Okay. Otherwise, we could then just print validation not okay. But of course, we are going to do some better thing later, because we not only know that the validation is not okay, but we know which fields have problem, because it's one benefit of using lists for that. Okay, so next step is going to be the test of this function validate. We need just to call that in the onClick event from this button. Okay, we are going to validate that and then to improve how to display this output to user. Okay, let's do that now. Now we have implemented the validation, we could test that. As you remember, we have defined the function and then we have set that to be triggered when click in onClick. So if you open our browser here, all fields empty, validation not okay. If I fill here one name, one email, but not fill the phone, validation not okay, it's still missing one field. And if I print here some phone, then we have the validation okay, everything fine. So our validation looks to be working, right? But what's the problem here? Not exactly one problem, but our validation message is very simple. Validation not okay, but why? What field has problem? We have this information because our list of fields with problem has this information. So we could present a better message saying what fields has problem. So let's do that in this part of the video. We have here, when the problem happens, the possibility to improve this message. And all fields that has problem are here in this list. So what we could do? As far I know the list is not empty, I have elements here. So we could do just simple improvements like validation is not okay, fields that demands attention, something like that. And then before presenting that, we could compute what is this list of fields with problem. So again, we could do here one for statement, and we are going to build this list. Like we could have here one kind of variable like fields list, okay, starting with one empty string, right? And then we could define here again this key statement to run over all elements that has the name of fields with problems. And here for each field with problem, we could just improve this message, concatenating here the field name that's actually inside this list. We just have to access that based in the key. And then we could decide what's the separator. We are going to use one comma to print that in a long string, or we could try to do one line break in JavaScript with this \n, and then we are going to print the list each field per line. And then here we could just take this variable that has the fields list in a string and concatenate that here as well. So now we have one complete message to our user. So testing that again, validate. We have fields with problem that demands attention, name, email, and phone. 3 fields are empty. Okay, this name I would like to have that in the line below. So just let's improve that together here. We could at this point add a line break as well. So let's return that. Okay, now you see we have 3 fields with problem, name, email, and phone. Now I'm going to fill the email here and then validate again. Validation okay, take out the phone, validate, validation not okay, fields that demand attention, phone, 1 element in the list. If I take out my name, what's going to be the problem? Name and phone. Name and phone has problem. So 2 fields, 1 is correct. It don't appear in the list. So you see, we are going to do the whole form validation based in the lists, and now 3 elements is presenting problem, and all of them are here. So here it is one example of how to make the form validation just handling the list elements. So here we have seen the most common functionalities from an array. That's the extension of the array, the inclusion of elements, the deletion of elements, and how to iterate over these elements. And just with that, you have seen how useful that is. But if you take any documentation of the array object, you can see how many methods and properties and things we can do with that. So the array data type is amazing and gives us a lot of possibilities, especially when we have a lot of data to handle together. So it's very nice to go deep with this array object and understanding its possibilities. Okay, if you are new with this topic, why you do not try to execute some example like the one we have done together here. In case you have suggestion of topics, please just write down at the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next time.